Cool. All right. All right, we're live, and just like in typical Westford fashion, I didn't schedule this beforehand, like for everybody to come and fill up the chat or anything like that. I'm very professional, but hey,
Let
Nikolai.
me let me get your link. Hold on.
Yeah, of course.
For your YouTube channel, just so that I can share it on my stuff. Actually,
Yeah, and like what you were saying right before we went live is that like with life stuff, it's having the time to dedicate and making the channel professional and making it what you'd want it to be. It's difficult. I know you're a
so
father.
difficult.
I've got my third kid on the way. Yeah, it's this kind of thing just fits in the crevices of my life typically.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that I for years I just floated the idea of doing YouTube, but I was like, oh, it takes so much effort. But the thing is I think people just appreciate authenticity. That's what
Yeah.
everyone has said about my channel. They said they just appreciate that I get to the point and I say my thoughts unfiltered. There's no edits, there's no jump cuts, there's none of this like fancy stuff. It's just raw. And so I guess some people appreciate that, though I do understand like the quality of my mic is low, like that kind of stuff. But it's like, you know what? I just
Yeah.
gonna do what I got. Do with it what you got. So
Yeah, that's my philosophy is just I'd rather be making something, doing something, participating in it instead of like I think a lot of people, and myself included, have spent a lot of time like thinking about the thing you want to do and like how it feels so far away. And I'd rather do it, I guess, half-assed,
yeah,
where I know it could be better than just not doing it. But when I first started, I had asked people like, what do you want? Like, what do you see that's not there? Like, what gap could I fill? I'm like, yeah, just be yourself. Like, all right, cool, I can do that.
yeah, and I think that's the big thing. And part of the reason I did my channel was actually just to mostly cover just current events from the Orthodox paradigm. So, like, is there people giving an Orthodox thoughts on things that are happening in real time to certain things that will remain relevant because of first principles, right? What are your first principles? And for me, it's orthodoxy, right? Orthodoxy is my ultimate first principle. And then from there, everything else flows. And I
Right.
think that that's why even if you look at some of my older content, it's still relevant because even though it's an event that's past, what I'm saying is still consistent, right? So, yeah. And, being a father myself has been an enormous blessing. And I've massively appreciated this living out this life and having this kind of dynamic that I never thought would happen at the time, but now I'm 31 with a 9-year-old, so
Wow. I turned 31 next year. I've got three and a half,
wow.
one and a half, and one on the way.
Oh, so you started a little later. I was early. I jumped into it with both legs, not even thinking, and this is before I was Orthodox. And um, now we're thinking about having another here soon. Now that my wife's health is better, but then of course, as soon as her health's better, my health takes a hit. So, um, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, God will open the door when He's ready. So.
Hmm. So, are you a convert to Orthodoxy out in Korea?
Yeah, so I grew up in Minnesota. Um, Most of my life, people can hear the accent probably.
Yeah.
And then I was in college, decided to go travel a little bit, went to Korea, met my wife, got married, had a baby, and then when she got pregnant, I just realized I had no meaningful skills.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was a history major in college, which is totally useless. Um, and so I was like, well, military it is. So I joined the Air Force. And that's how I got my IT skills. And then after I left the Air Force, I went into contracting. But in that time period, when my daughter was young, I was like, I need to figure out my spiritual life. I grew up Reformed Calvinist background, kind of non-denominational, etc. Uh, R.C. Sproul, John Piper, or Paul Washer,
Yep.
all those types of people were staples in my household. And I was disillusioned due to many reasons, mostly some theological, but mostly just the way the church operated. We went to 4 different churches growing up, and each one imploded for one reason or another, whether it was ego or theology or scandals, you know. Um, and so I was like, I need to find something that's stable that I can raise my daughter in. And so that's why I joined or I started looking into more traditional churches. Started with Anglicanism, really quickly wrote that off. I said it had all the same problems
Yep.
as Protestantism broadly, right? And
Pretty much
then,
just like the same problems, but with the claim of them being Catholic, right?
yeah, exactly. And then, you know, the Roman Church, I wasn't as deep into the theology for rejecting it. It was more of like practical. It's like, I'm not going to a pedo church. So,
Right. You aren't
I
even
mean,
like, I see how it changes over time. I see the innovations. I see how,
yeah.
the older generation talk about how different it is now. It wasn't even that. It was just you saw
It,
scandal.
I just saw it was overwhelming amount of scandal. I mean, it made my churches that I grew up in look functional, which they weren't. And I was like, I can't join a church like that. Even if I respect the heritage from a historical perspective, I really admired the architecture, the history, and all that stuff because I'm a nerd. I like history. But then someone clued me into Holy Orthodoxy, and I was in Korea at the time, and I was like, well, like I'm in the middle of Korea. There's no Orthodox church in Korea. But it was a miracle because I looked up, and the nearest Orthodox church to me was about 2 hours away
Mm.
by subway and bus. If I were to drive it straight, it's probably only 30 minutes. But because of how the mountains work in Korea, it takes like forever to get there by subway and train, or by bus and subway. And we arrive. I go to that. I reach out to the clergy of that parish, figuring this guy doesn't speak a lick of English. He's Korean. There's no way, right? Well, that priest, God rest his soul, had passed away like not even 2 months prior,
Mm.
and a new priest from America was deployed there. So I'm like, this is weird. Okay, so I reach out to that priest, and he contacts me back, and he drove. I think it was like a day or two later. He on a Sunday after he was done with liturgy, which is a long day for priests. He drove 2 hours my way
Wow.
just to meet with me and sit down with me and talk for like almost like 2.5, 3 hours. And he gave me my first icon, still have it, and told me a basic prayer rule because he thought that I had already done a lot of the research myself. I started looking into the theology, and I was really kind of bought into it, but there's a few hangups I had. And next thing I knew, I was a catechumen with my little 2-year-old daughter or 3-year-old daughter, I can't remember the age now, in tow, and we started attending. And 3 years of catechism, half of it under the Greeks, and then I moved and started going to the Russian
Okay.
parish in Seoul. So I was baptized under the Moscow Patriarchate, and yeah, that's where I'm at now. So.
Have you come back to the States and seen like a
Mhm.
difference in the parishes here and there?
Yeah, I've gone back to Minnesota, and I've attended a couple parishes in Minnesota, and then my folks moved down to Florida, so that's kind of my second home base. Whenever I go back to visit the States, I visit my folks basically in Florida, and yeah, I've gone to Antiochian Greek, Russian, Rokor. You know, I have basically every jurisdiction I could kind of meaningfully attend, and there's differences, but like if you know the liturgy, you know the liturgy, and
Right.
that's one of the things I appreciate about Orthodoxy. I don't even need to know the language; I can
Yeah.
just
I
follow
I
along.
attend a Greek. I have attended Greek parishes, and I don't know what they're saying, but I know, it's what litany they're doing, or
Hmm.
I know that part of the liturgy. It's the same tone. It's the same everything except for the
Yeah,
language.
yeah, yeah, and consistency and continuity really speaks to me.
Right.
So that's one of the things I've really appreciated about being in the Orthodox Church. Is I don't really have to worry too much about language as much as I can just uh, meditate on the liturgy as I follow along. Even if I can't follow perfectly in Korean or perfectly in Russian or perfectly in Greek, there's still this kind of baseline that I can appreciate. And then ultimately, I mean, it's the Eucharist, right? That's what we're
Right.
there for, right? Like
Right.
ultimately, it's the sacraments, the Eucharist. I distinctly remember the biggest hang-up I had coming into Orthodoxy, even as a catechumen, was icon veneration.
Okay.
And
So you were
very,
was it you were okay with icons but not the veneration?
it was, I understood in my head how I understood in my head how it was supposed to function. I'm like, okay, I understand it. It makes sense to me.
Yep.
But when I went up, and it was in particular, it was a weird thing. In particular, it was with the Theotokos. Um, Whenever I went up to try and venerate, I just get this like, I can't do it. It's
Yep.
weird. It's icky. And I think it was my reformed like upbringing that made that like very iconoclastic kind of
Yeah.
like tendencies, and I just couldn't get over it. And I remember distinctly my wife and my daughter on a Christmas were visiting my folks, and I had to work over Christmas, so I wasn't able to leave with them. Um, and they left. It was when I was in the military. They left to go to the States. And I remember distinctly, I can't remember if it was my wife or my mother, but one of them sent me a video of my daughter who was just barely able to stand. You know, she was like leaning up onto stuff and like grabbing things. She's short, so she wasn't able to grab it. And she grabbed a photo of me. And this was before I was even Orthodox. They sent me this video, um, like, hey, I never sent this to you, you know? And
Mhm.
it was exactly at the moment that I was like, God, I'm struggling with this icon stuff. And in that exact moment, my wife or my mother sent me that video, and it was my daughter as just a baby, barely able to crawl, sitting down. She had a picture of me in front of her, and she was touching my face with her hand very, very gently. And then she leaned down, grabbed both sides of the frame, and kissed the picture of me. And I just remember immediately going, oh, I get it now.
Yep.
Because in that moment, I thought to myself, is my daughter worshiping me? Is my daughter, does my daughter literally think that's daddy? No, but there's something instinctual that she understands that this is a prototype of daddy. If I kiss this, daddy will feel it. And I can tell you, when I saw that video, I felt that kiss.
Yep.
You know?
And I think kids do the same thing. Like this is funny. My she's 3.5 and she's been struggling being consistent to go on the potty, and she just pooped today, and there was like this giant turd and this small turd. She's like, that's mommy and that's me. I'm like, all right. That's just it. Obviously she doesn't think that, but like they always do, like like pretend of this thing represents you. This is a prototype of you. Oh, they're doing that all the time. So
Yeah,
that's a funny. I've never seen her do it with poop, but now I have.
yeah, and it's one of those things that you don't realize um, the subtleties of the icon claims until you start really digging into it. One of the things that I realize is that even I have this. I have a potato chip bag right there. That is Korean for the brand, and then below there is potatoes, right? Potato chip. Now, that is an image.
The words.
Those words are images.
Right.
When someone sees those collection of symbols that are drawn and or painted or however they are, it conjures up an image in their head. In the same way that an artistic piece conjures up an image of the event or whatever else. So, in principle, why would words? Why can we depict? Why can't we depict Christ or the saints in their reality? Because icons are supposed to depict reality.
Right.
Even if it's a metaphysical reality that's a little abstract, they're supposed to depict a truth. Those words are depicting a truth, right? And so I think that's really an important distinction that a lot of people don't understand.
No, I agree. I had a similar experience when I came into Orthodoxy. Like it took me probably 7 months to be like, okay, like the Eucharist and icons, I get them. Like I mentally assent to,
Yeah.
like the arguments I'm hearing. My attempts to debunk them have gone. I can't justify my own position. I mentally assent. But then with like crossing myself with icon veneration, it took me, months and months after that to actually do it, even though I agreed with it. Just because like it's weird. I'm not used to this. It's not my tradition. I haven't been handed that down. I was
Yeah.
24 or whatever, 23 coming into the church, and it just took a while. It was more of an emotional, spiritual thing than it was actually, because mentally I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that that is the core of orthodoxy, is that fundamentally it's all experiential. Um, reading, uh, one of the biggest mistakes, and this is my advice to people all the time, if you're coming into orthodoxy, one of the biggest mistakes you can do is approach orthodoxy like a Protestant. And what I mean by that is, oh, I'm just going to go and read the saints and come to X plus Y equals Z, right? And if I read X Father and read Y Father, I'm going to equal orthodoxy, and I'll know all the things I need to do and know in order to be orthodox. Or what is orthodox is X plus Y.
Right.
That's not how it works. We're not algorithmic, we're not formulaic. There are dogma, but fundamentally it's expressed, and our understanding of that dogma and the canons and everything else is expressed through the experience of the church, what we actually do, right? And that's something that I've emphasized for a long time now. This is why, like, when people ask me, because this is a big issue that comes up and people ask me a lot about, is like, well, what do you guys believe about baptism? And I'll be like, well, baptism saves. And they say, well, if you're unbaptized, are you necessarily unsaved? I'm like, not necessarily. And they say, well, how do you know that? It's like, well, the church's tradition and what we do in the church is we offer full funeral rites to catechumen. If we believed that it was a end all be all in every single case, we wouldn't do that, right?
Right.
If it was an end all be all in every single case, we would be baptizing infants the moment they come out of the mother's womb. In fact, we'd have women be giving birth in baptismal fonts.
Right. And we wouldn't have this long catechism. It'd be like, okay,
Yes.
You're ready, let's go. Because
we need to do this ASAP,
Right.
because it's your eternal soul's on the line, right? So clearly there's nuance there that a lot of the people that tend to be these kind of like strict, like, it's exactly how it says and there's no bending at all. It's just not how orthodoxy operates. That doesn't mean that we bend to break the rule. It doesn't mean that we bend to contradict. It means we bend to understand that there are circumstances which God understands that's beyond our capability of conceiving. And the church acknowledges those.
So I'm pretty sure I've seen you comment back and forth with Augustinian, you could call them Latinizer, Orthodox, like people that are probably good people, right? But they have from my perspective, it's more of a Western influence, and I haven't read all of Augustine. There's quite a bit to read, so I'm sure I don't have a full picture. But it does seem when I hear the Augustinian Orthodox people talk about, babies that are unbaptized are necessarily going to hell. That's just not what I've been handed down. It's not what I've read in the fathers. It's not what anything my priest has sent me that he's bestowed to me in the tradition. That's just that's not how it is.
My bishop and my clergy, I asked this question a dozen times to them, and every time they roll their eyes and say, "What are you Americans like getting so hung up about this issue for?" It's like even if you take a hyper like Augustinian view of the issue, even if you take that, because some saints did, and there's no denying that. Even if you take that, there is no assumption that it is always the case in every instance.
Right.
And frankly, again, the tradition of the church is to pray for those outside of the church. Why would God tell us, and why would the church tell us to pray for those outside of the church who die outside of its temporal bounds? Why would we pray for them if there was no hope?
Right.
Makes no sense. So it's just an inconsistency on their part. And again, there's some of them that I like, some of them that I don't have any time of the day for, and I say it how I think, right? I say exactly how I think. And at the end of the day, they can choose whether or not they want to continue down this weird crusade where all of the bishops are wrong, all the synods are wrong, all the practice of the church is wrong, and we're right because we read this one saint and we've collected a handful of out of context quotes that like say what we think it's saying. It's like, That's just not how Orthodoxy operates. And so for me, I'm like, you guys are not going to be successful because that's not how people operate. That's not how we operate in the church. You can do it all day long. It's not going to work. So
Right. I
just
mean, it's you
take
mentioned
solace
like
in that.
coming in like a Protestant, and like I've seen people like with Origin, like they start reading the church fathers, and then they pick like one or two church fathers. They're like, that's my guy. I even have met somebody who's like, I'm a Dostoevsky Christian. I want the Christianity that's Dostoevsky because I love him. Like I love him too, but he was Orthodox. Like there's no Dostoevsky Christianity trademark. That doesn't exist
Yes.
out there.
Yeah, and Dostoevsky at the end of the day submitted to his pope or to his bishop, right?
Right.
He was a layperson. I mean, and you know, this is never to bash any specific saints, but there are just some saints that are just not. They're not known for their theology necessarily. They're known for other reasons,
Right. Well, I
and
think
that's not
Augustine
wrong.
is like a ray of hope for me because you can be wrong on many things and still be a saint, still be a holy man, still
Yeah.
be received in the kingdom of heaven, still walk the path of salvation, reach theosis, all that. It's not, you have to have all of the dogmas correct. Well, I mean, well, with an asterisk there. If you're intentionally an Arian or something like that, or an Origenist,
Well,
obviously
yeah.
that's different. But
Remember,
I mean, like you don't have to be. It's not
Father
propositions that we talked about
Father
before.
Peter Hears and Father Peter Hears and some other clergy that I've listened to have talked about this, where they've said repeatedly that heresy is obstinance. You're being obstinately wrong. You've
Right.
been corrected, and you're obstinately still holding to that view. Um, and I think that there's some truth to be said about. I mean, Saint Augustine has an entire book towards the end of his life called Retractions, where he's just retracting a bunch of things that he got wrong. So it's like you have to read these saints in the totality of their life. For
And
example, early in I think it was early in Saint Gregory of Nyssa's works, he tended to lean a little bit bordering right on the edge of universalism.
right, a lot of people refer to him
Towards
as a universalist. Yeah.
Yes, but towards if you read his writings at towards the end of his life, he actually is much more leaning heavily towards the other side, right, where he's not even towards the bordering the line. So you got to read these men in context. They're not robots. They're
Right.
not just books on a page. They are men that lived the life of the church and grew in theosis. Right? That's the whole point, guy. The whole point, dummy. Right? The whole point, dummy, is theosis. So I think that's so important to
And I
remember.
think doesn't he say sometimes in his books like I'm speculating, like this is me trying to work this out, not like this
Yes.
is the dogma of the church. He's not
Yeah.
saying like this is the teaching. He's like I'm trying to figure this out in my mind.
Yeah, I remember one time one of these guys posted a quote, and it was just like this whole long thing. And then at the end of it, there was a question mark. I said, "Is that a statement or a question?" It's that simple. Like he could be asking the question. He could be
Right.
speculating on this, right? He could be writing this letter to somebody and saying, "Hey, is this relevant? This is a question? Like I'm not 100% on this," or it could just be rhetorical question. It could be all these types of things. There's so much context that you lose if you don't have a holistic picture of it all. And guess where you find that holistic picture? The theanthropic body of Christ.
Right.
The church in a corporate theandric sense is how we come to these matters of truth. And I think that's the thing that people need to take away at the end of the day is that this is all theandric.
Right.
It's all based on our life in the church and the church coming to decisions corporately. So that's why the ecumenical councils have so much emphasis because they're universally received, they're universally understood as binding, and every single Orthodox Christian and bishop has accepted it and said, yes, this is Orthodoxy. Whereas just like this is why like the Roman Catholics always do this. They're like, your guys' patriarch said something like
Right.
mildly ecumenist, maybe.
It wasn't from Ex
point.
Cathedra, bro. It wasn't Ex Cathedra.
Yeah, and I always go, you guys realize that the thing that is relevant to us is in order of operations, our bishop, our local synod, pan-Orthodox synod being comparable to ecumenical council. That's it. That's the only thing that's relevant. there's nothing. There's nothing more that's relevant.
Right. Well, it's because they're
Um,
constantly judging orthodoxy from the Roman Catholic position.
yes.
They're not actually doing
Yeah.
an internal critique usually.
Well, I don't think. I think, and then here's the thing that bothers me about some of the apologetic space right now is that a lot of these guys, especially some of the Roman Catholic apologists, they're smart.
Yeah.
They know better, and yet they still misrepresent our view. Trent Horn's recent video was just abysmal. It was shameful for a guy that well educated, for a guy that should know basic fallacies, should know our basic position.
Right.
I mean, it's not difficult. It takes all of 5 seconds to understand the Orthodox basic understanding. We're conciliatory. It's that simple. We base our theology is based on consensus.
Right, and he accused Orthodox apologists of doing what I think I've seen many Roman Catholic apologists do over the years, which is making an argument against. He's saying we make an argument against Roman Catholicism that would falsify our own position, and I see Rome doing it all the time. Like, oh, you guys, your bishops do X. I'm like, well, if that's what makes us a false church, we have many examples of that in the first 1,000 years, which you claim to be the church of the first 1,000 years. So it would falsify your position as well. So I'm like, did he give an example? Because I remember him saying that. I'm like, what is he talking about?
He's mostly saying that our patriarchs said something mildly ecumenist. By the way, most of the time, completely out of context and not even close to what
Right.
Pope Leo has or Pope Francis has done. But what can you do about these guys? Like, honestly, at the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion that debating a lot of these like up and coming Roman Catholic bros is just
The
not really
15-year-old?
worth it. Dude, that boggled my mind. At first, I was like, "Oh, this Talon guy," so I'm going to do a video responding to his debate with Jay, and so I did, and I just broke down step by step how Jay answered every single question and responded to every single thing, and then how Talon refused to actually respond to Jay's retort or his argument and answer the question. And he ran away, but then he goes off and starts claiming victory. I'm like, dude,
Right.
how old is this guy? And then I find out he's 15. I'm like, oh my lord.
And he made like the
Right.
cringiest AI anti-Jay Dyer video. Did you see that? I saw that. I was like, I think Talon beats and like he mogs Jay in one regard, and that's cringe core.
Oh.
Because
But-
that was cringier than I've ever seen from Jay.
Jay is cringe for ironically,
But it's
Like,
fun.
He knows
It's
it's
fun.
cringe.
Like I was actually listening to Funko Pop in the car on repeat the other day. It was just like, oh, this is fun. But that Jay Diorite video that he did,
I like. Have you seen the video? It's like 4 years old. The one where it's Jay responding to Matt Slick, and then it's like a song they made
the
out
boomer
of it.
tard. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a goblin,
A demon, a boomer.
tard.
Yeah,
it's the
I
best, it's the best like thing.
that was actually my first encounter with Jay in anything. Was
Oh, really?
yeah, I was just like I think a catechumen at that point, and I started listening to debates, and I was listening to Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, mouthful, argue against Matt Slick, and suddenly this voice jumps in, is like, you're a goblin. I'm like, who is this man? And that was my first ever hearing Jay.
Yeah. I will say this. I came to understand Jay significantly more after my own encounter with Matt Slick and his little butt buddy Joel, who runs his own Orthodox, or his own, not Orthodox, his own YouTube channel. I jumped on a debate. It was with like Wi-Fi Gospel or something like that. And I jumped in there, and I was completely good faith. And Matt Slick, I asked him about relics. I said, okay, here are like 4 or 5 examples in the Old Testament and the New Testament of relics explicitly existing, meaning holiness is imputed through the object, meaning
Joseph's
God operates-
bones.
Elijah, St. Paul's handkerchief, the snake on the staff, the ark, just to name a few. Peter's shadow. All of those things are material. They're created things, and yet God operates through them. And so I said all of these examples, and so I asked him, I was like, in what principle do you oppose relics, and why can relics not do the same thing today as they did in the scriptures?
Did he say
He straight
something
up-
like that was for that time, like speaking in tongues was, but that's a
Worse.
different time, or like some kind of dispensational?
Worse, he didn't answer at all. He
Huh.
sat there and refused to answer because he, instead of answering my question, he asked me a question. And he asked me, he's like, well, what do you mean by grace? How does grace operate through? Grace is not a thing. Grace
Yeah.
doesn't operate in.
Grace is
I'm like,
unmerited favor. How could
yeah,
unmerited favor be on a rag, on a
yeah,
bone?
exactly. And I just said, that's not the question I'm asking. And furthermore, you don't need to label it grace. If you don't want to label it grace, you can label it holiness. And I answered. And then he just continued to refuse. Just, and the thing is that I got booted because I used a naughty F word. I think I called him FAGGOT as
Yeah.
we like to. And I was in the military, and we tend to have it,
The
you
boys,
use
the boys have fun, you know.
well, the military, they use cuss words as a punctuation, and it's a bad habit. You
Yeah.
you develop a very bad habit because even in boot camp, they're just cussing at you like half the time. Like half the time, they're just like cussing at you and like insulting your mother. It's like I let it slip, and then they invited me back on to discuss with Matt Slick. But instead of letting me speak, they put me in the back. On Streamlabs, they put me in the backstage,
Yeah, yeah.
and he proceeded to do a 20 to 30 minute like preach session against orthodoxy and
It's like
against me.
poisoning the well. Did he let you on after he poisoned the well, or?
The host let me on, and Matt Tuck said I gotta go, and he left. And then his buddy Joel came back on, and Joel was there to hear that the host said we're gonna give Nicholai a chance to respond to all that, and Joel straight up said, "No, it's my show. I don't want him to respond." And I was just like, "No, no, come on, man." And he said, "Fine, fine, but I don't want to talk about that specific topic. Let's talk about something else." And so then I brought up, like, fine, let's talk about Malachi 1:11 and how your church doesn't actually use incense and doesn't have a pure offering. And he said, our pure offering is our prayers. I said, but you believe in total depravity. You're a Calvinist. How can you believe that anything from us, our
Right.
prayers, are like filthy rags from your
Right.
point of view?
And anything from us would just be God making us do it anyways, right? From a Calvinist with predestination
Ex-
and
Exactly. And I basically called him out that he says, you think Malachi 1:11 is this? That's ridiculous. Look at Revelation. I'm like, what does Revelation have to do with this? In fact, that supports my position because that's
right.
a heavenly liturgy. And he just said, stop interrupting me. Act like a man. And I just lost it. I was like, go F yourself, you stupid mother effer. And then I ended it with saying the naughty N word. And I got booted. And so I repented of that. I have confessed to my spiritual father about it. But the point that I'm trying to make here, long diatribe, long story to say, you got to be gracious with your online apologists. Jay has to deal with some unhinged
Right.
freaks, and you
Yep.
wonder why he's a little impatient sometimes, right?
Yep.
I had to deal with that, and I lost my mind. After trying to deal with it for 2 hours, I was waiting around for 2 hours just to make a 10-minute point.
Right. Especially because online people act so much different. Like if you met Matt Slick in person, he probably would engage or whatever. But since there's an audience, there's this posturing that happens and.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing about Matt Slick. He's just not an honest person. He's just a dishonest person. And so I just have very little patience for dishonesty. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone is just extremely dishonest. The way he engaged with Father Deacon Ananias should have been it basically ended his career, frankly. He hasn't really meaningfully had any he used to be a big debater in the atheist sphere. No one gives him the time of day anymore. He used to be a big debater amongst the evangelical sphere. He's not anymore.
Well, yeah, the song that is a dunk on him is outlasted him. It's way people still listen to that, but they don't really even know who Matt Slick is.
No one listens to Matt Slick anymore. It's funny is that the evangelical space, the Protestant Calvinist evangelical space, is dominated by some of the most low tier polemics that I've ever seen. They used to have at least semi-competent theologians and apologists like R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur and things like that. But now, what do they have?
There was Bonson and Van Til, and it's really strange to me still seeing reading them, and they're so smart and coherent in their presentation of tag, but they are Calvinists, so all of their
big problem.
Arguments against atheism being deterministic falls back on them. I'm like, aren't you deterministic as well? It doesn't make any sense. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and now they have what, needgod.net and Taco
Yeah.
Talks.
Which one?
Like,
I mean, physiognomy check on both of them. My wife saw needgod.net and was like, that guy, you should never let any child near him.
yeah, I hate doing that to people. Like, I know, like, Fiazami has some truth to it. I do, but but the fact that he uses a filter,
He uses a filter.
yeah. So he posted a video trying to sell his free tracks on his website. He's got wrinkles, he's very pale in complexion, and he's mostly gray. Like, his hair is very much gray. In all of his YouTube videos, he's using a filter, which
Oh,
basically smooths out his complexion and colors his hair into a more youthful
yeah.
color.
StreamYard's got one I could pop up on for me. It's a enhanced skin appearance. Let's try that. What's it gonna do to me?
It
All right, I'm
smooths
doing
out.
it now. Now I'm just like him. I don't know if I don't know if it did anything.
It's the lighting. It's the lighting. You have to be closer up to the camera, and it has to, and it's also depends on the strength of it. But the point is that these are the guys that you're gonna be using as like a main defense. It's like, no wonder so many people are leaving in droves from
Right.
the evangelical sphere to orthodoxy.
Well, that's because of the rise of Orthodoxy online and all the parishes. Like our parish, we've done a big expansion in the last couple of years, and now we have to get another one soon because we've baptized like over 100 people this year, and we have another 60, 70 catechumen, and we have to have more space. And so,
Yep.
and we know people like there's catechumens at my church who started asking questions about Orthodoxy to their Reformed pastors, and then they were like rejected, and they like have sermons about them being heretics, like looking into Orthodoxy. Like, so it's more just like damage control. Like they're just trying to
Oh, and that's not
poison
going
the
to help
well.
anyone,
They're not
by the
actually
way.
engaging. Right.
That's not going to help anyone because, again, at the end of the day, Protestantism is all interpersonal, and so it's you alone with your Bible. And when
Right.
you make a sermon denouncing somebody in your parish, and everybody knows, like, if anyone has ever gone to a Protestant church, you know, every Susie and her girlfriends in the back in the bakery section or whatever are all going to know and talk about, did you see what the pastor said about XYZ? Yeah, I heard about
Yeah.
that. He's going to that weird Orthodox church. Well, I'm kind of curious because, why would he say that? I've always loved Joel or whoever it is, right? That is going to happen. And it's not going to stop. And that's why it's funny because I responded to the Graham Emanuel Baptist Church, like 5-part series against Orthodoxy. And you just know that the reason that guy did a 5-part series is because maybe 2 or 3 significant families in his church left for Orthodoxy.
Right.
And now there's several others asking questions, and he's like, I gotta do something.
Right. And I can, I can, without having seen that series, I can pretty much know that all of his points are going to be something. If he went to a catechism class, for one catechism class, all of them would be explained. Like, oh, they worship Mary. It's like, what? No, they worship icons. Like,
Well, here's the
ask
thing.
a couple questions. You'll figure it out.
Someone made a recent point that I really like. When someone says, do you guys worship Mary? Yeah. Just say yeah. And then they'll say, what? And it's like, yeah, but what do you mean by worship?
Mm.
Because, of course, we adore Mary. Because God is in her. Right? Why wouldn't... What worship is a very, like, amorphous thing for most Protestants. For
Right.
us, the only time you're truly worshiping the one true God is when you're sacrificing to him. In our
Right.
case, it's during the worship service, the Eucharist. That's the highest point of sacrifice and adoration and all this stuff. Whereas with Mary and the saints, veneration could be interpreted as worship in a sense.
Well,
I mean,
I look at
what
it
did
as like Protestants don't have that worship. They don't have the Eucharist. They don't have that's offering that sacrifice. So they collapse worship into veneration. So when they see veneration, that is worship to them.
Yeah, and so I always say this. I'm like, what did the king in the Old Testament do to Daniel? I can't remember which king it was, but he fell down before Daniel.
Nebuchadnezzar?
And what's the word? I think it might have been
In Daniel,
might have.
I just
been,
read Daniel
yeah.
recently. I'm pretty sure it's Nebuchadnezzar. And
Yeah.
in Daniel, right?
He fall down before the feet of Daniel, and what did he give Daniel? The word they use is worship.
Right.
And Daniel didn't say, no, 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 you must only worship the one true God. Only no, he accepted it. And did God strike down Daniel for that? No. So clearly there is a nuance here that is not entirely explicated by a simple reading of the text, as they always say,
Right.
right? So
Well, yeah,
I
with
think
all the
that's important.
saints, it's like we are venerating the Holy Spirit that's transformed those saints' lives, that's indwelling those saints,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Precisely. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's an important thing to understand. So
Going back to the damage control, it reminds me when I first started coming to an Orthodox parish, it was OCA, and
mm-hmm.
it was like I started going, and then COVID happened, and then
Yeah,
it was a really weird time to be an inquirer and then a catechumen, especially at that
yeah,
parish because they were super on
yeah,
board with everything, and I didn't really know all the distinctions and stuff. Like I didn't know the priest there was like really ecumenist, and it was they had a
yeah,
lot of liberal leanings and things like that. Because I'd looked at stuff online, I'd read books, and then I started attending. But
yes,
I started just asking questions like, why are we doing multiple spoons? Why are we not allowed to venerate icons? Even though I wasn't venerating, I was just asking the questions. And he's like, have you been listening to that heretic Father Peter Hears? I'm like, I have no idea who that is. I went and looked him up and I was like, oh, everything he's saying is making so much sense. Thank you, Father, for pointing me to this heretic.
yeah. Father Peter gets so much flack, but he's been vindicated. I mean, he was vindicated about COVID. He was vindicated about the jabs and all these things. And so, there were parts of our church that, unfortunately, out of an abundance of caution, decided to compromise on some core things. And that's only a human thing. I can understand why some people made the mistake. The mistake, though, going forward, is to not learn from that and
Right.
to double down. And not, frankly, I think a lot of clergy and bishops probably should apologize, but it's not for the clergy to do, that's for the bishops to do. The bishops that got it wrong need to come out and say, we got this wrong.
Absolutely.
And I think some of them have. They tact, maybe not in a explicit manner, but in a pragmatic manner. And frankly, in the long run, the conservative, quote unquote, conservative wing of Orthodoxy is going to win out because all these converts are coming for a very specific purpose because they
Right.
want rigor. They want conservative. They
They are
don't
so
want the
used
humanist
to
flaw.
the economy. They're so used to the lax. They're craving that rule, that acrivia.
Yes. And so I think that is the big thing. That is going to be in the future.
So yeah, this stream is not referring to Saint Nicholai, and also thank you, well, Emmanuel, for the 50 pesos. You're not a cheapskate. This just represents you as a child. All right. Oh yeah, Father Peter here does actually have documents, and his document for the religious exemption for the jab came in clutch for me. So thank you, Father Peter
Yeah,
Hears.
I gave the Orthodox Reflections and the Father Peter Here's document to my bishop, and he signed it. Signed it for me. I got it in a religious exemption from my bishop. He said, "Yep, I have no problem with this." He pencil whipped that for me, and and the thing is that Korea didn't really mandate the jab. They highly encouraged it, but they didn't mandate it.
Right.
And some of the ways they encouraged it is like you couldn't go to certain restaurants if you weren't masked and jabbed. But that
Did they
only
have a
lasted.
passport, or was it just?
No, no. They give you a little card when you get the jibby jab to prove that you have been, but you don't have to show that because of HIPAA law here in Korea. So, but at the end of the day, it was only like 1 or 2 months before they realized that it wasn't sustainable to just like restrict people that didn't get it. And so within like 1 or 2 months, me and my wife were able to go out. We just had to mask up, and it's like whatever.
Yeah.
I tolerated the masking only because it was mandatory on certain public institutions. Outside, I could take it off if I wanted.
Yeah, I very
But
much did not tolerate it, and that's largely because I was here in Washington State, where it was so heavily propagandized and pushed everywhere. I was like, I'm not going to go along with any of this.
yeah, one of the things people need to remember in Asia is that masking is already a very cultural thing.
Right.
They've every time there's a bird flu outbreak, everyone puts it on. If you have a cold, you put it on. If you for women, if they're not wearing makeup that day, convenient. Just put it on, right? They were already doing that for years prior to this, so it was like not.
The only time I ever saw people wearing masks here in Seattle was Asian people, visiting or whatever. They would be wearing masks pretty much all the time, and that's the only context I had was of people out in the public.
Yeah. And so for Korea, it wasn't too bad. Like I said, they weren't very draconian, even compared to the States. In some states, I should say, so they were pretty just like not a big deal. Me, my wife, and my daughter never got jabbed. Actually, the people that gave us the most hassle was when I was working for the DoD at the time. The company I was working for pressured me highly for it. That's why I needed the exemption. And I basically told him to kick rocks. Like, I'm not in the military anymore. You can't force me to get a jab.
Right.
So.
You also meant that Father Peter here's, hey, he's got the document, folks, is referring to his jurisdictional stuff with his situation. What else do they want him to do? I mean, Manuel, I don't care what he said. Who's his bishop? I mean, like, I'm not going to engage with any of your argumentation, but who's his bishop?
Yeah, I've always said this. I'm like, we know he has a bishop. The question is the bishops can't decide who that is.
Right. Yeah. Like it's
really
like, do we hold the same standard to Saint Nectarios, like with all his jurisdictional things that were going on?
No. And also, by the way, this is like Craig Truglia brought up this point one time, and I thought it was really, really important. In the history of the church, an issue like Father Peter's would have been a footnote.
Right.
There were all sorts of problems like that was more significant than this, and yet we didn't act as if like it was like the end of their like ability to be a priest.
Right. They basically say that they act as if he's been defrocked and he's heretical, but bishops serve with him. My priest has served with him. My priest has gone to Mount Athos with him.
Yes, and not only that, numerous jurisdictions have invited him to various events and things like that. I think everyone involved basically knows that it's really just an ego problem between a couple bishops that refuse to resolve it because of egos. I think that's really what it comes down to. Now, do I know that for sure? No. But, again, Father Peter isn't the one that can resolve this issue. It is only the bishops.
Right.
And if the bishops refuse to resolve it, what can Father Peter do besides continue his work, right?
Right. That's part of what makes it so ridiculous when people don't engage with any of his arguments and just ask who his bishop is. It's like Manuel said, like you said, what is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to be like, you bishop, you're my bishop now? Like, is that something he's even able to do?
I certainly hope that he can go to another jurisdiction that will just accept him and allow him to continue his good work, because Orthodox Ethos and Uncut Mountain Press, by extension, is a treasure trove of things. It is an excellent source. And, I have nothing but good things to say about Father Peter. He's always been good to me. So.
Yeah, I agree. Same here.
He said something. He said something unorthodox. Who is his bishop? Is what Emmanuel says. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The arguments don't matter. I have something in my back pocket I can continue to wave whenever it's resolved. What are they going to do? But he didn't have a bishop for how long?
Yes, they're just going to point out he was uncanonical for this long of a period. Like, it's silly. Eventually, it will be resolved,
right.
And God willing, it's done so sooner than later. But God allows suffering to happen so that people may handle it, and clearly, Father Peter has handled it with grace and humility, in spite of it all. So.
One thing that came out, going back to another topic, Talon, with his debate with Jay, I started seeing a lot of Roman Catholics critiquing Ortho Bros, saying like, they basically said like, stop asking epistemological questions, like stop asking about epistemology.
Epistemology, yeah.
Like we know that the early church taught the papacy, so we don't need any epistemology. I'm like, so you don't need to know how you know that the papacy is true because you know the papacy is true. That's what you're saying, right?
Question begging.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's one of those things that is really amusing to me that none of their top guys are willing to engage with the substance of the arguments or the substance of the critiques. They're just kind of always like flirting around the edges, muckies. Like, One of them got really upset recently. I think his name was Elijah Yassi. He's like, you
I've
guys who
seen
use
him a lot. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, you guys that use keys are just doing yourself a disservice. Like, no, we're not, because it works.
Right.
There's a reason why, because people notice that that's the only thing you can go to is this one verse.
And the way,
To
and you're presupposing the interpretation that you have on it is the interpretation that the church has always had. That it's that the Matthew 16 is saying that all the supremacy and the universal jurisdiction, all that stuff is baked into that. When that's not in the text, that's your interpretation on top of it. It's almost like also like a Protestant saying that it's you don't have to be basically saying that the text is self-interpreting at that point. If you're not going to defend your interpretation of it, you're just going to say look at my keys.
yeah, it's it's a big issue, and I think I struggle with this a little bit because I understand people. I guess all these guys. I mean, ultimately, why do they want Orthodox people to come into Rome?
Right.
Despite their pope saying not to convert us.
Right. Well, that's
Why-
I had
why-
a big video that went off because Voice of Reason responded to it. Was the Roman Catholic dilemma, which was kind of bouncing off something Father Peter here said, which is Rome says we have the Eucharist, so what could we be lacking? They say that we are a true church with true sacraments, that we have Christ, but we just don't have the Pope. So if we have Christ, how could the Pope be necessary? Like you were saying that Christ is not necessary, or that
Self-contradictory.
right. And the only responses I've had is like, oh well, you have the sacraments, you have Christ, but it's not licit. Like you're taking Christ at your own condemnation because it's not approved by the Pope. I'm like,
That's not what their pope says, though. The
right,
Pope
because
says
the
that
Pope says that they shouldn't convert us. I got a baby here.
no problem. I know what it's like.
Thank you, wife.
I know how that's like when I have the little ones at that age. So trust me, I get it. But yeah, no. One of the things that I always say to them when they say that is, I simply, what could we lack is true, but also the reason they want us all to convert is because they know Orthodoxy is filled with very traditional people.
Right.
And they're hoping that by converting a bunch of us, that they can retake the papacy, and they can bring back in a traditional pope, and we can unify Christianity and blah 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 blah. Like that's really what they're hoping for.
Right.
They're
Well,
hoping-
all their apologists are tradcats, Eastern Catholic. I mean, there's a lot of SEDs, but there's not. I don't see a lot of like Novus Ordo apologists. You know.
No, you won't find them. You won't find them. And even the ones that do, like Michael Lofton. He's actually, funny enough, Michael Lofton is the most consistent about applying the Vatican I papacy, because he actually says, yeah, Vatican II is binding, and everything the Pope says and does is ordinary magisterium, and you are bound to it as a Catholic.
Right. He cannot.
He's at
He
least
cannot
consistent.
err in faith and morals. Right.
Yeah.
Does he do the? When he said that it wasn't from anything that I disagree with, wasn't ex cathedra.
Yeah, we were saying this the other day in a space. Did he spin around 3 times, hop on one foot, and then say Automatopoeia? And that's the only time it's ex cathedra is when he does that.
Right.
But if he's crossing his fingers while doing it, then it doesn't count.
What's your thoughts
Yes.
on the papal minimalist view that Yassi has? Because he's basically saying, I mean, when I heard it at first, I'm like, wouldn't that be the Orthodox view that he's first among equals? That it's not the. I've seen him define it more now, and he defines it essentially against the maximalist. Is the maximalist view, and his view is that the Pope can act alone and he can be against every bishop, but the minimalist view is that it has to be the Pope plus one or more bishops for you to know that it's
he has to consult the bishops, but there's no limiting principle about that. How many bishops? What if all the bishops are wrong and only the Pope is right? Like, how do you know?
he said that it wouldn't happen because of the Holy Spirit would never allow that to happen.
Okay, so it's a unfalsifiable position, therefore I can dismiss it. That's what it comes down to. If it's an unfalsifiable position, it's wrong. For Orthodoxy, we have a falsifiable position. How do we know if it's falsifiable? Because there has to be continuity with the early church. It's that simple. If there's no continuity with the early church, it's wrong. It's falsifiable. Whereas their system, the papal minimalist position, is just saying basically we're unfalsifiable. It's impossible to actually demonstrate that the Pope is wrong because the Pope will never be wrong.
Right.
What?
And it doesn't. It's irrelevant if the papal minimalism isn't the Vatican's position, which they'll say it is, right? But like, yeah, I mean, and they always say like, if you go and read Vatican I and you come out with the maximalist view, that's you not interpreting it correctly because our position is minimalist. I'm like, the things that, like Radinger, that Pokemon ass sounding guy's name, it's pretty maximalist.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be very honest here. There is not a chance in hell that any of them can ever give you a list of the dogmatic teachings. You can ask them for a list of all the things that are binding for a Catholic, and they cannot give you a list. Show me the infallible list from a pope that gives the infallible binding dogmatic teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. You can't find it. It doesn't exist.
No.
Show me the ex cathedra list. Show me the list of ex cathedra statements.
Which, if they're going to be consistent with their arguments against Protestants, like how do you know what the infallible list of Scripture is? Like how do you know what the canon is? How do you know what the list of books is infallibly? You don't have that. It's not in Scripture. That same argument would go against them with the ordinary magisterium, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. It's just, again, it's incoherent, and this is why I've been asked to debate Elijah Yassey and all these guys, and they're like, "Hey, you got a pretty popping off YouTube channel. You should debate Elijah Yassey." And I'm like, "No,
right?
No, I have zero desire."
My only reservation with doing like a formal debate with a Roman Catholic is like the Jewish lawyer aspect that would come out of, like, I haven't done the 1,000 years of reading all the things. So when you come at me with quotes, and I'm like, I can pretty much know it's a quote mine, but I haven't gone in. But like, well, the context was at the time. Like,
yeah, I don't have the time for that. First off, second off, my interest is not in trying to lawyer ancient history, which both, I think if someone is honest and they're not someone who's done tons of reading, can come away and say both sides have pretty strong arguments. I think someone honest can come away with that. My question is your church here and now consistent with what you supposedly believe? And the answer is very clearly no. The modern Roman Catholic Church is contradictory all over the place. It is a complete crapshoot. Whereas Orthodoxy, despite the issues, all the issues we have currently today are the same issues we dealt with in the early millennium. So for me,
and none of them falsify our system in any way.
Exactly. So for me, debate the system. Don't debate the niche historical stuff.
Right.
That stuff is for scholars, not apologists.
Right. And again, it would still be getting into interpretation, the epistemic issue of how do you know that you're interpreting that church father correctly?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this baby's going after my mic.
She is insane. Come here.
She is insane.
Get out. Get out.
Come on, little monkey.
That's what 3-year-olds are for.
This one's the 3-year-old's running around probably naked, but the
Go. Get out.
1-year-old's going after the mic cord.
Get out. Daddy.
My gosh.
No, but that's brilliant. I love it.
Daddy is working.
Yeah, they're after the cables. Okay, our friend of the channel, Yvonne, said he's going to bed. He said he did a video reply to you and was asking if you could reply sometime. So I can probably look it up and send you a link. I have no idea what it's about.
If you did, you just have to comment and say, "Hey, I did a video reply." It's fine. Yeah, I'm not. There are some people that I've ruffled feathers with. I don't think I've ruffled his feathers. He's been a very nice guy in the comments every time I've seen him comment. So
he's really nice. He's a good guy. He does have a track record of, how to say this without making, I'm not throwing any beef anywhere. Yvonne, you're a good guy. I said that already, right? He does do critiques of like our guys or whatever. Like that's what, well, Manuel said, the conflictuous, I mean, the nuance, always finding holes in our guys. So he will make videos trying to. I think from his perspective, he is trying to help us bolster our arguments or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first one to admit that I make bad arguments occasionally. But the thing is I'm not all too concerned with having a perfect, like, solid wall of an argument.
Right.
I'm worried about, like, is this within the orthodox framework that I'm operating in? Am I? And if I am, then great.
I'm trying to get a lot better at making bad arguments personally. That's
Yeah.
that's been my goal lately. Is
Part of it is
how can
just
I make
doing
bad
it.
arguments better?
One of the easiest ways to avoid making bad arguments is to simply practice spotting fallacies.
Right.
Practice spotting fallacies, and you'll notice that 90% of the time that people make arguments is they're doing an argument from incredulity, begging the question, etc.
Word concept
and
fallacy.
Word concept fallacy. Those three, if you can spot those three with consistency, half your job is done.
What I was referring to though is I've spent a lot of time arguing with atheists, and I was probably going to do some more videos on it soon because it's kind of is like infinite content generating machine, even though it fatigues me because it's these people
yeah.
you could literally not reason with them. So I've dumbed it down to where I just mirror everything they say to me back to them, and they like don't even know that they're getting dunked on and like that they're being parodied.
Yeah.
And I mean it's fun to a certain point. Like yesterday I was going back and forth with this one lady, and there was like 5 or 6 times like I can't tell if this person's really smart and like getting what I'm doing, or if they're really dumb. I'm pretty sure they're really dumb.
Most of the time, they're pretty dumb.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, a lot of these atheists are dogmatically in line with their chosen scientific, butt buddy who does the reading and is super smart, and therefore it makes them feel smart because they agree with the very smart guy.
I mean, that was like what Alex O'Connor kept saying. He's like, my friend from Cambridge always says this. It's like,
yeah.
okay, how do you know he's right?
Alex O'Connor has completely stepped back from making arguments against religion altogether because he knows that his position is, like, if he actually debates someone who's competent, he's gonna completely founder. I mean, there's a reason he's avoided Jay like the plague.
Well, yeah, if atheists still want to use all of the incredulity, all of the but God bad, all the things they always say, like, oh, I don't have a position. I don't have to. That's the one thing that like really frustrates me is like they so obviously have a position. And like if I said, atheism is where if I just like made something up and said this is what all atheists believe, they'd be like, oh, you're straw manning me. I'm like, how can I straw man you if you have no position?
If it's not a position, how can you straw man?
Right.
Right. If it's just a negative critique, it's just like, it's a lack of belief in God.
So I had these shorts, and it's basically what I'm doing. Like I was doing these, I thought a lot of them were really clever. I did shorts that if Christians argue like atheists, I would just take what they're saying and then try to like recontextualize it, and then I would take the comments that the atheists would say, and I would just make videos of those as well. So it was just an infinite generating content machine, and there was this one atheist that debated Jay like a couple days after he jumped on me because I was reviewing his debate with Pajot, which. It wasn't a debate. He had Pajot on for an interview, and then he started like being really antagonistic against him.
I remember that. Yeah.
He jumped on my channel, and then I was like, "Hey man, I don't know anything. I'm just watching you, and I don't know anything about you." And he's like, and he started doing the same thing to me. And he's like, "So you don't even care about truth?" I'm like, where do you get off, dude? Like, what do you mean? Just because I don't agree with you? Like, I don't. I'm not an atheist, therefore I don't agree. I don't care about truth. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I don't think Jonathan ever once said that too. It's like kind of funny. I remember it was a while ago, but I remember
it was like one of the first times I've heard Jonathan cuss. He was like, he said like you're so damn ignorant or something like. I have to look back, but he like definitely like you made a Canadian. Yeah, you're so full of shit, eh? I'm like, you made a Canadian cuss. That's not easy to do.
No, it is not. And I atheists are just... When I was 20 or in my teenage years, when I was debating atheists on Facebook, okay, fine. But even back then, I saw through their nonsense.
Right. Even when I was a Protestant, like just going with like fine tuning and cosmology, the cosmological argument, I mean, then it was even back then, they weren't
Most
really
of
much of a threat. Yeah,
hmm The only the like top tier atheists could find a way to wiggle around the cosmological or the fine tuning argument.
which when you read Bonson, he makes a good point of why fine tuning in itself isn't a good argument. And I still see like people say it's a really good argument. Like, look at all this evidence. I'm like, well, it's not. Like, Bonson talks about couching all these other arguments within tag because you leave the atheist, the skeptic, the agnostic no room to wiggle. So with fine tuning, if you're like, oh, look at the sun, the stars, look at how Earth is just far enough from the sun to not be cold, but far enough away to not get burned up. All these things for life to exist, and like, oh wow, another coincidence, and they just like throw the fact over their shoulder, like, oh yeah, just lots of strange. They can just say weird things happen. I don't believe.
Yeah, yeah. They'll just say big enough space, long enough time, you can get anything.
Which
This
if you watch
is
Jim
space.
Bob, he makes really good arguments like against
I do.
evolution. Like, oh, actually, millions and millions of like keep adding more millions. It actually makes it worse because of all of the transitional spaces you'd need for eyeballs to come out, for a beetle that has chambers where different chemicals come together and then combust, or for fangs to develop and then spit out acid. Millions and millions of years just makes it more improbable, because you're telling me that like the famous one he did was so you're telling me we were unisex, like androgynous hermaphrodites, and then we split off into two species. So what, for 100 million years we had like 1/8 of a penis that didn't do anything. We're just like, we just got to wait around for this penis to do something.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, it's not. It's the reason the evolutionary theory is just incoherent and it doesn't work is also because from a Christian paradigm, I know there's a lot of people that try and like marry it. Jim Bob made a good argument against Redeemed Zoomer in his debate on evolution, and he said, at what point is Christ taking up universal human nature, and how is there a universal human nature if it's a constantly in flux what a human is?
Right.
What about Adam's and Eve's dad? Was
Right.
he just was Adam and Eve's dad just an animal? And by necessity, RZ would have to say yes, they weren't ensouled. So once the fall happened, Adam and Eve would have been fully within their rights to eat their dad.
Right. Yep. And like morality gets all murky. Like all of this, like natural selection through death and carnage and killing each other wasn't immoral until Adam came around. Like all these things they had to do out of necessity were not wrong,
Which makes
and did not cause any fall.
Yes.
Yep. That's why talking to like catechumen, I'm young Earth. I think it makes more sense, and I think there's arguments I've never seen debunked. But old Earth is still compatible because it's evolution that denies our dogma of death being a result of the fall.
And old Earth is like one of those things that's very like ad hoc and arbitrary. Like
Right.
The only thing that is meaningfully relevant to us as humans is when Adam and Eve came into the scene. So even if you want to say that God created all the processes and it slowly formed over millions of years and all this stuff, and then once Earth was established, God planted Adam and
Right.
Eve. Okay, fine. But like even just accepting that, you're still just the only thing that's relevant is Adam and Eve. But then you have to like dismiss like Noah's flood, and you have to like it's just like you constantly have to like find loopholes rather than just say the plain. And I hate saying this because it's a very Protestant coded language, but the plain reading of the text makes it pretty difficult to believe anything other than this is how it happened.
Right. Especially when Paul and Christ both talk and act as if Adam was a real historical person.
Correct.
And that the story was real and historical with the same as it's read. So if you're going to mythologize and make it into a parable, like it opens the floodgate to it doesn't work. You have to say like Christ was ignorant, and then he wouldn't be God.
Yes. Well, and also, I think another thing about evolution and the atheistic paradigm that people try and marry with Christianity is I think what it puts you in is it puts you in the defensive. rather than being in the offensive. And one of the things that I always tell people is you never want to be in the offensive in any debate. In any debate, you constantly having to answer questions, like constantly having to be on the back foot, is gonna, from the audience perspective, makes it look like you don't have anything to rebut or parry with.
Right.
You're just constantly trying to dodge and weave and things like that, and it makes your position look chaotic and untenable. Whereas if you're the one that's pushing on their worldview and you pin them down on their worldview, then it becomes an issue. This is why RZ did so terrible, because he was never able to actually, like, his position is that you can be a young earth creationist and be completely consistent with Christian theology and morality and all these things. It's just he was arguing that his position is also tenable. But that allowed Jim Bob to go, I got free reign. I can just make you parry all day long.
Yep.
Right? And so RZ didn't know how to debate in that case. He
Well, that's
completely fumbled on that one.
similar to the Roman Catholic position. The Roman Catholic position, as I understand it, is that you can be an evolutionist. You can also not be an evolutionist, but you cannot deny that Roman Catholicism is compatible with evolution. You cannot deny that it could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So you can't argue against it, but you don't have to affirm it.
Yeah, I just think it's silly because evolution is just completely out of line with basic Christian theology on a lot
Right.
of areas. And so for me, it's just like the Orthodox Church doesn't take a formal position on this, but
There's
the
lots of saints that
consensus-
talk about it and are not
Yes.
do not accept it in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, exactly. And so if we're just going to go based on the consensus of the church fathers, it's pretty much a no-go. That's not saying it's a damnable heresy,
Right.
but it's certainly at least minimum a no-go. And I think that's the key thing here as well to remember, that a lot of these things are tertiary to the more important aspect, which is salvation.
Right. But I know
how
people that have left
we interact.
Orthodoxy because they're like, I can't deny evolution, and if the church doesn't teach evolution, I can't be in the church.
Well, then, that's a condemnation on their own soul.
Right.
At that point, you pray for them.
Yeah.
You've put your love of science and your love of a man-made theory, which is constant flux, by the way. Which theory of
Right.
evolution? Because there's at least a dozen out there. Which theory? You've put your love of that above the church, the Eucharist, and all these other things.
Right.
At
You know,
that
it's-
point, I have very little sympathy for it, other than I'm going to pray for your soul.
The biggest problem trying to argue with evolutionists is that they're all empiricist, determinist, materialists. So like trying to engage with it on a philosophical basis, and they just keep trying to bring it back to evidence. Like, no, we're talking about prior to evidence, how you interpret evidence. How do you know that your interpretation is correct? All of that. Like, can we look at if something is always in flux? That is self-contradictory because the flux would also have to be in flux. It would have to flux out of the flux. It's self-defeating.
Well, Christ taking on universal human nature. I mean, the Roman Catholic position isn't any better of a position. I mean, their doctrine of the Immaculate Conception,
Yeah. Infinite
does
regress.
the same. It does the same thing to Christ's humanity. Him taking up universal human nature. If the Theotokos had a unique way in which she was born, then Christ isn't taking up universal human nature. He's taking up a nature from Mary. That's why the Immaculate Conception cannot work. That's why we don't have it, because our view of sin, our view of the fall, is foundationally different than these other people's. These Western, constantly trying to make modern science work with their systems. I mean, the only reason they needed the Immaculate Conception was because their view of sin, their view of the fall,
Right.
had shifted from the early church. It's that simple. And a lot of guys don't like that. I remember talking, that's one of the core arguments I always go for, when some of the, as Father Stephen D. Young says, crypto-Protestants within the Orthodox Church, aka Latinizers, what they often say is I always point to, it's like, we clearly don't have the same view of sin. We clearly do not have the same view of sin as the rest of the world, as the rest of the Christian world, because we don't believe in the Immaculate Conception. We don't believe that is a necessary precondition in order to um, bring forth a pure vessel for God, for Christ. Mary was pure. She was sinless.
Right.
She did not need to be purified because she was purified at the Annunciation, right?
Right.
And and people are like, why did she need an Annunciation if she didn't have sin? Because, it really bothers me when people do this. But if you listen to our divine services, if you actually attend the services and pay attention, especially during Holy Week, and the Paschal services and everything else, the Annunciation was for her to be fully deified, not for her to be purified of a stain of sin.
Mm.
She didn't need to be purified from a stain of sin. The consequence of sin is death. That's what is there. What does God say in Genesis at the fall? He says the punishment for sin is death. That's what he says the punishment is. He doesn't say the punishment for sin is that you're going to be guilty and all of your descendants will be guilty of this sin and therefore punished because you've incurred my wrath. But how do you incur God's wrath when he already foreknew, right? From a Calvinistic perspective or a Roman Catholic perspective, if he already foreknew, like, what?
That's when you get to like atheists actually have good points, and I sympathize with them when their context of Christianity is all these malformed, contradictory, silly forms of Christianity.
Theological systems, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, well, God made us, and He made us. He knew that we were gonna do this, and then He forced us to sin so He could punish us. But then He had to punish Himself to keep from punishing us because He really wanted to punish us. It's like, yeah, all that's silly. All that PSA stuff is stupid.
It's ridiculous. And another thing to mention about that is that when it comes to how we view the fall and things of that nature, it always has to be under the understanding that foreknowledge, and we have complete and total free will, and that foreknowledge is only relevant when an action becomes an object of knowing. So what is an object of knowing? You can something only becomes an object of knowing, and this is something that I get from Dr. Nathan Jacobs. He was on a priest's channel recently. You can do God's foreknowledge, Dr. Nathan Jacobs, and it should pop up on YouTube. But and he's one thing I'll critique him on this: do double speed. Because he has he yammers, like he's not very concise with his points. So
He's never read that brevity is the soul of wit.
No, he is very meandering when it comes to like getting to the core point. But when he does get to the core point, you're like, right. But objects of knowing can only exist once someone has made a decision within time and space. So our decisions become objects of knowing. Our free will decisions become objects of knowing within time and space that God can then interact with, right? God is outside of time and space, and He interacts with objects of knowing or objects within the created order. But they don't become objects until we've made the conscious decision to do that, right? But because He's outside of time and space, He can interact with any object of knowing at any point in time, even though for us it's a singular track, right?
Right.
So it sustains our free will, and it sustains the ability for God to interact with us and allow us to have true decisions.
Right.
True decisions.
I've never actually seen an argument that shows the logical necessity of foreknowledge negating free will.
I've never seen it either.
Right. They will say that, if God knows you're going to do that, then you're not actually choosing it. Like, if I know my daughter is going to disobey me, did I make her disobey me? No, I did not.
Classic example is you as a parent are sitting there and watching your child reach up onto the stove and it's hot, and you allow them to burn themselves. Did you allow them to burn themselves? Or did you force them to reach up onto the stove? No. But you knew that it was going to burn them.
Right.
You knew the consequence of that action. That's a classic example as well. But I think even more deeply than that is that God wants us to have full free will because that's He's created us in His image. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just automatons. You got two choices ultimately. In my opinion, it's a binary. Some people try and make this third position like Molinism, where God knows every single branch and blah blah.
Oh yeah, I've
It's
heard that. Yeah.
very very messy, and we're not Molinism. Orthodoxy is not Molinist, but they try and make sense of this kind of like Calvinist, like as a response to Calvinism. They're trying to like create this like weird system
all
of,
possible universes.
yeah, and it just doesn't work because there is only one possible universe that God created. It's the one He created.
Right.
And as created beings, God allowing us to make the decision and Him interacting with those decisions and giving us true choices. In the scriptures, this is self-evident because there's numerous examples that we can go in the Old Testament where God says, Israel, if you do X, Y, Z, I will punish you. If you do X this, I will bless you. That's a true. If there wasn't a true decision, why is God telling them in the first place? If He already preordains them to make XYZ decision, right? I believe in true decisions. That was a true choice that God was offering to them.
Right. Well, I think you can also like demonstrate free will because of the impossibility of the contrary. Like if you are a determinist and you're making an argument, then you're essentially like you lose at the gate. Because if you're trying to convince me of something, who is me? Who are you trying to convince? How are you trying to convince me if I'm determined to reject or accept your argument before I'm not engaged, I'm not involved anyways.
Debate becomes impossible.
Right.
In a deterministic paradigm. And they'll try and find loopholes around this. It's like, oh, you have free will within your salvation, which what does that even mean? And things of that nature. But I just, yeah. Once you listen to that Dr. Nathan Jacobs podcast, like actually let me try and find it real quick. Actually, maybe if you have any comments you want to get to real quick. God's foreknowledge, Eastern Orthodox.
I can do a little ad real quick for the other project I am working on.
Go ahead.
All right, it's called EWBSX, Eternal White Boy Summer Radio. So here is the ad. Oh my gosh, I don't have it downloaded on my computer. I have to watch an ad first. It's a long ad. It's 15 seconds. All right, here we go.
They thought they had you under their spell. But now you can have all the white pill power right in the palm of your hand. Introducing the Goyan, the Gamma Oscillation Yield Interface Module. Your direct connection to EWBSX, the Cyber Bully, the only radio station that really gets it. It's peaty, it's high tea, and it's always playing bangers. Plus, you'll never be blackpilling again with plenty of high thumos sound bites and regular doses of timeless wisdom from the cyber bully himself. Available in 2 frequencies. Alpha mode for the untamed stallion and family mode for sensitive ears. Disintegrate the limbs, the grifters, and the subversives. Tune in to the sounds of Eternal White Boy Summer today on your very own Goyim device. EWBSX, the Cyber Bully. Radio for our guys. But the power of the Goyim in the palm of your hand today. Available for download on all Apple and Android devices.
Yep, go pick up your Goyim. It's free. Support the project.
Dude, do you make the music for Jay?
Oh no, I don't. But
he loves that types of stuff. You have to reach out to him and say, "Bro, I have you for music." He loves that
the 80s Miami Vice vibe. Yep.
That's great. That's awesome. One of the I found it. I sent you a link.
I got it here.
Yeah.
Where I got let's say 10 to 15 minutes before I got to go to church. There's the last service because there's flooding here and it had to get rescheduled. But where in here did you want to? And we can do another stream another time. But is there something here? You have a timestamp?
It's in the 55-minute mark, I think.
Oh, that's
roughly.
right where I am. Okay.
Foreknowledge in order to have that. And so the instinct is right? The resistance to compatibilistic determinism is right. The resistance to the idea that God is just sort of off before eternity, sort of doing his choose your own adventure and then letting the computer program run and our choices don't really matter and God is play acting. I think a lot of what the open theists feel is that when you're looking at something like, Moses and God, they think that with foreknowledge it has to be that God's saying, yeah, I'm gonna kill him. That's your cue. Right?
Like it's a stage play.
Need it, right? And that's why Moses' prayer doesn't mean anything, because it was always the plan all along, right? And that sort of thing. And so I think those instincts are right, but I think where they fall short is the idea that somehow foreknowledge is incompatible with free will.
Right.
I don't think that's true. And that, foreknowledge, if you're going to concede it, that somehow foreknowledge turns into this type of meticulous providence that is a computer program running. And yes. I don't think that those things follow. Now, those are two closely related things, but I think John of Damascus's approach offers you a way of having everything that they're looking for, without having to compromise, the traditional Christian view that God knows the future.
You might want to speed it up to 1.2.
Yeah, that is what you said. Yeah,
coming from the same scriptures.
Yes.
A New Testament example: Christ tells the apostles, in the Gospel of John specifically, the feeding of the 5,000 in his version. He says, "Okay, what are we going to do?"
Right.
And he says he knew, what he was going to do. But he was testing them, right? And someone could say, "Well, there you go. There's the predeterministic, sort of approach that God already had determined exactly the plan, and the test was part of it, like the play acting.
Right.
So how would we respond to that? Again, using St. John's model.
Yeah. Well, and I actually think that it's okay to say that there are times when God rhetorically asks a question. I think a great example of this is Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
So where's your brother? As if he doesn't know. and so
or in the garden.
I don't think saying that the interactions are authentic.
Where are you?
There's no room for testing.
Right.
Like a rhetorical test. I mean, we all know what it's like to interact with that and say.
It's like a child, It's like
who is my mom? Who is my brother?
Because it's a pedagogical moment.
Yeah,
you're trying to teach the person something.
Yeah, and so I think on the one hand you do have that. You have these pedagogical moments. I mean, but I think you also have in there something that's really important. Let's talk, for example, about it applied to the whole Cain and Abel thing, but it would also apply to something like Abraham and the whole question of saying, like, now I know, that you love me because you didn't withhold your son. If I'm a Molinist, I can reasonably say, well, what's the point of the test? Because God already has a bunch of hypothetical futurities, and one hypothetical
you just go down the right path.
Abraham, I tell him to sacrifice his son. Well, then, okay, there you go. He would sacrifice his son, so I already know it.
Yeah.
But on John of Damascus's view, the test is indispensable to the knowledge. So yes, he knows it in advance, right? He foreknows it. But the only reason it's an object of knowing is because he chose to do it. And so you can't remove the object of knowledge from the equation. The test is the reason he knows that. And so even though, and I think this is something that David Bradshaw has talked about this, others have talked about this, but in terms of these three fathers and the concept of time, like
that was solid.
Experience of time.
That, and he goes on to yammer, and then he does another really profound point, and he's yammer. So it's like St. John of Damascus's view that things are objects of knowing once the choice has been offered. Like God only interacts with them once they're objects of knowing. It blows up all of the other models.
Absolutely.
Of the other models. It blows up the Molinist model. It blows up the Calvinist model, the Determinist model. It blows them all up. And for the Orthodox, we have a completely unique understanding of foreknowledge and free will. Completely unique. Well, I wouldn't say completely unique. I would say the patristic early church understanding of free will and these things.
Because Roman Catholicism should have St. John of Damascus to go to, since he's a pre-schism saint, but they don't care about him, it seems.
Yeah, but they only recognize him because they, in theory, recognize the Seventh Council, but in practice, they don't really hold to the Seventh. St. John of Damascus is not an important saint in their paradigm.
Right.
For us, he's indispensable. For them, it's kind of like, it's
like how we feel about Augustine in some way.
No.
I mean, I'm not saying 1-to-1, but like just
in certain ways, yes. They hyper fixated on certain things like Thomism.
Right.
Thomism kind of supplanted Thomas Aquinas supplanted a lot of the Eastern thinkers in terms of the way that they thought about metaphysics and these types of things. And I think that that led them down that path. They do have some excellent Western church fathers like St. John Cassian that was totally Eastern in the way that he thought about these things, but that was partly because he was a monastic that was highly, highly influential in Western monasticism up until that point. So, yeah, I think the objects of knowing thing really just blows it all up. So.
Yeah. Because if you didn't actually give them the opportunity to make the decision to create the object, then that foreknowledge wouldn't be there.
Yes. Yeah. The ability for God to interact with our choices is only because we made the free choice to make that into existence. It was one of the things that will support this as well. This will help people understand. We can maybe leave off on here, but is really, really, really profound. In Genesis, what do we believe God's intention for creation was from the Orthodox paradigm?
For him to be joined with his creation.
That's one. What was his intention for us, though?
To be deified.
Deified, and what is the purpose of deification?
Union with God.
Union, but also to be what does St. Peter and St. Paul say? Co-laborers, right?
Yeah.
How can we be co-laborers
Right.
if all of our decisions are predetermined?
Right. It would be God doing labor through us, not in the way we mean through us.
God is making us and my priest has talked about this, my bishop has talked about this, and other clergy have talked about this. God is literally making us co-creators in the creative act despite us being creations, which is
right.
a glorious thing. Glory to God that he allows us. What does he tell Adam and Eve to do? What is one of the first things he tells them to do in the garden?
Fast from the with Adam and Eve, so not naming the there's name the animals.
Yes. To name something is an act of creation. When you name your child,
right,
you are becoming a co-creator in the creative act. God is knitting your child in their womb, and when you name them, that's why the name of someone's name is so vital to their essence, in a sense. That's why it's a very shameful act to change your name that your parents gave you, right? It's a very like, oh, what, you're ashamed of the name that I gave you, the person who granted you that. Why? Because there's a sort of creative essence to it.
I mean, they call it breaking a tie. So there's something that ties you to your family, to your past, to your parents through the name. Precisely.
Yes. And that's why there's such a seriousness about when women give up, in the Western context, women give up their name to take on the family name of another. That is considered a becoming of one flesh is such a weird concept, right? And so, I mean, Saint John Chrysostom talks about this in On Marriage and Family Life. If you read that book, mind blowing, by the way. Everyone who's married should read it.
Yep.
The becoming one flesh is such a weird. He spends like 3 or 4 pages just talking about how weird the concept of becoming one flesh is. But anyways, I don't want to belabor that. The point is that objects of knowing only make sense because God is making us co-creators in the creative act of creation. And that's part of the reason, and it actually can explain why the devil despises humanity.
Right. He doesn't have that. Now that he's fallen, he doesn't have the same choice, right? He can't repent. That's one thing. Like, I do got to leave here. Got to get to church here. But like, this is a tangent, but it's relevant. I swear. There's this author named Neil Gaiman, and he writes about like angels and demons, and kind of plays with mythology, Christian mythology a lot. And the biggest problem I have is that he all of his angels and demons he write have human nature. They don't have angelic nature, so they have the same free will and the same decisions and the same causal stuff that we have. Yeah. And it's just, he doesn't understand the actual cosmology, even though he's playing with it.
Yes, precisely. And I think that is so important to understanding not just the world and the cosmology of the Christian world. Like, why do we have natural disasters? Because some of the
Right.
angels that were given dominion over those things fell.
Yeah.
Earthquakes, the dominions, the thrones, the principalities, a third of all the angels. It didn't just say like the angels with wings on them and they're sitting there as your guardian angel. It's talking even the dominions, the thrones, and the principalities. A third of them fell.
Right.
That's why we have natural disasters. That's what Father Stephen DeYoung talks about. But I will let you get going.
Thank you. If it wasn't rescheduled, I'd be able to keep going. But thank you for coming on. Really great conversation. I thought you're welcome on anytime. I know we got a big gap in time zones, but we can always figure it out.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I just need head notice, and I can mostly work it around. So, God
You got
bless.
it. And if there's any specific topics or things you want to get into next time, now that people hear, because a lot of people are like, who is this guy? Have I seen him before? Oh wait, oh my gosh, we got another. I gotta even look at this. 100 pesos from Well Manual. Convinced I was predestined to make bad super chat jokes. I didn't even know that was a super chat because I was looking up on this screen. And 14 months. Thank you, man. All right.
God bless you, Emmanuel. Have a wonderful day.
Farewell, everybody. Nicholai, do you want to shout out any of your stuff? I have links to your YouTube and X on the description.
Yeah, just check that out. Also, right now, a buddy of mine, you can see it on my X feed, currently raising some money for my health situation. You guys can read about it there. Even if you just share it, it helps. So, God bless.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I'm going to sign it off and hope you have a good good beginning of your day.
Yeah. God bless.
All right, man.